Hi, my name is Colby, and I'm a software engineer here at Torch Designs. Today I want to talk a little bit about a developer's perspective on SEO for search engine optimization. When we think of search engine optimization, we might traditionally think about just optimizing our keywords to rank in Google. So let's say I'm a air conditioning repair company and I want to rank for air conditioning repair in my area. I might say all across my web pages, air conditioning repair in Lakeland, Florida, or wherever you may be located. And that is only one part of the SEO puzzle. So what I just mentioned is more of on-page SEO, but we also have off-page SEO, which refers to backlinks from reputable sources such as blogs and various social media pages. And we also have technical SEO, which refers to the more back-end side of your site, the code and the server infrastructure that drives it. The technical side of SEO is what we'll be focusing on today. So, why do developers matter in SEO? If you might think that SEO is purely a content game, there actually is a lot more that goes into it. So, developers can control the code quality, that being the styling, the code that makes the different elements animate and actually do things in conjunction with the raw HTML, which is actually the site content and the markup that goes along with that. The developers also control infrastructure. So that might be your server that drives the website and serves up the files. They can also control the security of your website through what's called HTTPS, which we'll address a little bit later. They can also control the UX or user experience of the website, that being the accessibility, especially the mobile responsiveness of the site. So, that being if a user on their cell phone visits the site, does it actually look good for their phone? Is it actually designed for the cell phones, or is it just a desktop site that has really tiny text on the cell phone that users have to zoom into? That's not ideal. We'll dive a little bit into that later as well. So before we do the technical details of the developer side of SEO, I just want to talk a little bit about the impact that SEO can have on your website. So if you want to rank in Google or appear high in the search results, you can purchase Google Ads, but it turns out that the vast majority of web traffic actually comes from what are called organic search results. So that's just the user entering a search query such as air conditioning repair near me and getting those actual raw results from Google, not the sponsored ones with the gold background behind them, but beneath those, the raw results that are Google ranking the site naturally. A vast majority of traffic actually goes to those naturally occurring sites, what we call organic results, and only a tiny proportion of that traffic actually goes to the paid ads. And similarly, you have a small proportion of traffic going from users actually entering your website directly, sharing it on social media, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, a vast majority of the traffic comes from the organic results, as I just mentioned, which makes it really, really important to appear high in those search results. So what can we do to increase our ranking in those organic search results from a development perspective? One of the things we can do is use structured data. So structured data are little things that we can add in the back end of the code to tell the search engine what our site actually contains and what it's all about. As we all know, machines can't really actually understand website content at a human level. So what we can do is we can actually help them out and help them see what the website is about. So for example, if we type in a title item type equals movie, which the structured data there is the item type tag there, we tell the search engine that it's a movie that we're referencing, and it can help us categorize our search results. Similarly, if we have a recipe on our website, instead of just listing the recipe in the search results in a pure text search result that you might be familiar with, if we use a bit of structured data, we can make that recipe appear really nice in the search results. So you can see here on the example images on the right, we can have a thumbnail of that recipe, the rating, the time that it takes to make, et cetera, directly in the search results, which is quite a bit nicer for the user. And search engines notice that as well, which and they will rank you higher if you use structured data. Almost three-quarters of website pages that appear on the first page of Google actually use structured data. So this is really important to getting your site to rank. Another thing we can do to improve your site ranking on search engines is using internal links. So internal links are the links between pages on your own website. So let's say you have your home page that users always land on when they just search, torchdesigns.com. That would be what we call your home page. Let's say you mention or have a link on that home page to your About Us page or your Contact Us page. That would be what we call an internal link. Those really help search engines find the various other pages on your website. So those are really helpful for increasing your ranking in the search results. If you don't have very good internal linking, if those links are not present on your site and your pages on your website are kind of just sitting there with no other pages on your site referencing them, it's a lot harder for search engines to identify that those pages even exist. They have to kind of find them directly, which is a lot more difficult than the search engine just visiting your website and finding those links naturally. In addition to that, if you have a link that's actually broken, which means the link is there, but it leads to an invalid page, that can also hurt your search ranking as well. So these internal links are very important to have corrected and up to date on your website. What can we do to track that? Our websites might be very large. They might have many links across various pages of the website. There might be hundreds here. So there actually are free tools that we can use to check our links that we have on our website. So as you can see here, I ran a report on our own website. We only have one link that's broken, and it's not an internal link. It's actually just a link to Instagram. So we can get that one addressed, and then we'll just be fully green across the board, all links working, which search engines will really like, and that might help our search results. In addition to those things, we also have the website load times. So the time that it takes your website to load for the user really makes an impact on your traffic and your search ranking. Um, every additional second that your site takes to load, you lose 4 to 7% of the users. So if your website takes 6 seconds to load, let's say, that might not be a long amount of time traditionally, but in the sense of waiting for a website to load, over a quarter of the users that are waiting for that website to load, once that hits 6 seconds, they might just back out and say it's not worth it, go somewhere else, and you might lose that traffic. And search engines will take note of that as well and rank your site lower if it loads more slowly. So it's really important to address the load times there as well. So what can we do about that? One thing we can do is we can compress images. So what image compression does is it reduces and removes data from the image that the human eye might not really be able to see. So you can see here we have the original image here on the far left, and then we have a compressed version of that same image over in the middle. So that looks largely the same to the human eye. However, it is over 90% smaller, so it makes it a lot faster to transmit to the user, therefore lowering your load times and increasing your search rankings. It is worth mentioning, though, that it is a delicate balance. You don't want to compress too much. You can see over on the right, the image is still perceptible, of course, but you can see the pixelation that's happening there. It doesn't really look too great, so it is a delicate balance there. In addition to image compression, we can also do what's called minification to our CSS and JavaScript files. So without getting too into the weeds, over on the right, you can see some CSS style code. So essentially what this does is a long list of what are called rules that tell your site how it should look. So we can say this text field should have a red background, or this object should have some spacing around it. And when you have a large website, you might end up with thousands and thousands of lines of those styles. And in those styles, you can see here that we have spaces and blank lines that make it nicer for the human to read and edit, but it's not important to the computer at all. And it turns out that those spaces and various white spaces aren't really necessary for the computer to do its job of applying those styles. However, those spaces take up quite a considerable amount of space, and they might slow down your load times if you leave them there. Whereas if we minify the CSS and JavaScript, you can see over on the bottom, it reduces all that unnecessary white space, keeps it functionally the same for the user, but it reduces that file size quite significantly, therefore reducing your load times. One final thing we can do about load times is to use content delivery networks, or CDNs. So you can see here, if our website server that's actually hosting the files that will be sent to the user whenever the user visits the site, if that server is located somewhere in Florida, for example, and the user is located somewhere in Europe, those files have to physically travel across the ocean to reach that user. That can take quite a long time. What CDNs do is they copy the site files from that original server, let's say in Florida again, over to servers across the globe that might be closer to the user. So let's say that same user is in Europe. If we have a server in Europe that already has the website files copied over ahead of time, then the user can connect to that server in Europe. And really, the site files don't have to travel nearly as far relatively compared to reaching all the way across the ocean to Florida, which can really speed up our load times. Another thing we have to address when it comes to the technical side of SEO is the security and infrastructure of the website. So, one important thing in this day and age of the internet is to have a SSL certificate on your website. So, this is a key security piece of your website. It allows you to use the secure HTTPS protocol. If you don't have an SSL certificate on your website, users will be limited to the comparatively insecure HTTP protocol, which not only is insecure, but whenever users visit your site that doesn't have SSL on it, they'll get that warning message that you can see over on the right, which I don't know about you. To me, it's quite a bit scary. And as a user, I might just back out and you might not receive the traffic from that user. And they might just go somewhere else. And search engines might take a note of this as well and dock your rankings as well because you don't have a secure site. So SSL and HTTPS are very important. In addition to that, keeping downtime on your site to a minimum is an absolute must when it comes to your search engine results. Even a little bit of downtime where the server or servers serving your website to the users, if those go down for even a small amount of time, your search engine rankings can get really hit because as a user of Google, you want to be able to visit sites that actually work. If Google is serving websites to users that don't work, then what's the point of Google? So they really, really dock you for that. As you can see in that case study over on the left, even with just 2 days of downtime, an e-commerce website lost 35% of its organic rankings, and that took weeks to recover, again, over only on just a couple of days of downtime. So keeping your servers up and running as much as possible is really, really important to your search engine rankings. So what can we do about those things? So going back to the SSL certificate, you can actually get an SSL certificate on your website for free using a program called Let's Encrypt. So that you can just do at any time. You can make it auto renew. There's really no reason that you shouldn't have it on your website. Regarding downtime, what you can do there is you can use redundant hardware. So you can have multiple servers at one time. So let's say one of those servers goes down, you might have one or more still running, so the user and the search engines don't really know the difference when one of those servers goes down because you still have multiple copies of your website. So your website is still functionally online to the outside world. And then you can address that down server and get it fixed up before all of the others go down, right? Another thing that we can do to improve our search engine results is mobile responsiveness. This might be one of the most important ones in this day and age because almost 3/4 of website traffic comes from mobile devices. So users are on their phones reading your website, and if they reach that website and it looks something like over on the right, where it might look fine on the desktop version, but on the telephone, it looks pretty terrible. The images are very squashed, the text is all over the place. If the search engine sees that, they will really dock your rankings for this, and the users themselves might not visit that website ever again after seeing something like this. So, what can we do about that? Well, we can apply mobile specific CSS styling. So you can see here down at the bottom, that's an example of what's called a CSS breakpoint. So those styles only apply to devices at or below a certain width. You can see there, once we add some of those breakpoints, the site looks quite a bit nicer on the mobile environment. So we've discussed several different technical aspects of SEO today, and there are many more out there. So how do we keep track of all this? And how do we see where our own websites stand in terms of all of these technical aspects? Well, the good news is there is a website that is called pagespeed.web.dev. It's completely free. You can run a scan on your website, and that will tell you various technical issues with your website that will hinder your SEO, and it will also make suggestions on how to fix them. So for an example, during the creation of this presentation, I ran it on our own website, and you can see our accessibility scores, mobile responsiveness, things like that. We did pretty good there, but the performance of our website, that being the load times, for example, that needed quite a bit of work. So we've since employed some of the techniques discussed today, those being image compression and server maintenance and things of that nature, to speed up those load times and increase our score in the performance area, which search engines will take a notice of, and therefore they may increase our rankings in the search results, those organic search results specifically. The key thing to take away today is that SEO is not just a job for the marketing team. It's not just a game of writing content in a certain way or anything like that. It's a combination of work from the marketing team and the development team to make sure everything is in shape, not only from a content standpoint, but from a technical standpoint as well. Thank you all for watching this video today. I hope it gave you some valuable information. And of course, if you have any questions about any of these topics, please feel free to shoot us an email. We can be reached at support@torchdesigns.com, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much, and until next time.